Alrighty, this video is about the next concept from chapter 5, Sorites arguments. These are arguments that we can think of as basically chains of reasoning. So rather than just one standard form categorical syllogism, they contain a bunch all bundled up into one. So what we want to do in order to put these in standard form is we want to make sure the predicate of the conclusion is in the first premise, and then each premise includes one term in common with the previous premise. And then we can follow the chain all the way from the beginning to the end. And then in order to test if a Sorites argument is valid, we have two different methods that are spelled out in the text. First, we can check each sub-conclusion along the way according to this standard way of checking a syllogism for validity. We can use the rules, or we can use Venn diagrams. Also, there are rules that are particular for Sorites that are spelled out into your textbook. So I'm going to give an example going through the first way of figuring out all the sub-conclusion of the mini syllogisms along the way. You can see here the rules for Sorites are very similar to the rules for syllogisms in general. So let's look at one example from your textbook. So here's the Sorites argument. We can see it's different from a regular standard form categorical syllogism because there are more than two premises. So first we want to figure out what's the conclusion, and then we want to spell them out in the way before. That means that the predicate of the conclusion is located in the first premise, and then we want to figure out, to follow the chain of premises such that each one contains a term in common with the previous one. So I've done that here. We're going to reorder this into the right order. All A are B, no B are C, some D are C, so some D are not A. The next step is to figure out which sub-conclusions occur along the way. So these first two propositions, all A or B and no B or C, can lead us to a sub-conclusion that's not explicitly stated, but that can help us test this overall argument for validity. So what follows from these two statements? In order to see what follows, let's use Venn diagrams. So let's diagram out these two premises and let's see what conclusion would follow. So let's put the middle term B on top. C is going to become the minor term, and A is going to become the major term. So all A or B means we fill in any A that's not a B. No B or C means we fill in the overlap between B and C. And so then what would follow? Well, it's going to follow, if we're taking C to be our minor term and A to be our major term, no C or A follows from those two premises. So then no C or A becomes our sub-conclusion that we can then use that as a standard form syllogism with some D or C. So our middle term now is C, our minor term is D, and our major term is A. So no C or A means we're going to fill in the overlap between C or A because there's no C that's an A. Some D or C means there is something that's a D and a C, so we're going to put an existential mark in that D and C overlap here. And then the conclusion here, some D are not A. Does that follow? Well, yes, we can see that from this Venn diagram because the D that's a C has to not be an A since no C are A. So this Sorites is valid, which we can tell by looking at the composing syllogisms of the Sorites. Sorites contain more premises than this one, so I encourage you to work through the examples in the textbook to get practice both applying the rules of Sorites as well as deriving sub-conclusions and checking them for validity using Venn diagrams. If you come across an example that you have trouble working through, please just let me know and I'd be happy to talk it through or make another video about that example.